Hello, and welcome to what is actually if I'm not mistaken, are we in episode 73, Quinny, of the End Product Podcast? 73 episodes young. As always, myself, Stish, here alongside my sparring partner, my partner in crime, on the other side of the border, the northern terrace, is Quinny. How you doing, Quinny?
I'm good, mate. Good. How are you?
That was an elongated version of the intro, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's not doing too bad. It's miserable weather up here. It must be said, absolutely horrible. I'm double layered up, and all the heating's on, and I'm getting those like war memory PTSD moments of bad winters in Scotland and being in this freezing studio for it all. So yeah, all good, but fearful of what is to come.
Similarly, yeah, the weather here is horrendous. Actually, the last sort of 40 minutes before we came on live, I've been up on a stepladder just outside this little studio. So like the room that I'm recording this in is actually really small. It's almost like a little box room. And we built it. I kind of used my pirate radio knowledge to build this out and soundproof it so that it didn't bother my neighbours. But in doing that, there's like gaps between the sort of building bits of the walls. And whenever we have really bad weather, I get little leaks on the roof, the external roof, which then leak onto my plasterboard roof. So I've come in today and I haven't opened it up for a few days, and I've got all like wet patches all over the corner. So yeah, nightmare. I don't enjoy the wet weather. I'm definitely going to have to try and get this roof fixed so that I don't literally come into a pile of crumbled plasterboard basically in the studio. But yeah,
roof sounds like there'll be a couple of thresholds that'll set you back.
Yeah, it will definitely be a few thresholds. But on the subject of that, I did actually manage to scrape a couple of thresholds this weekend. Got the rare and the super rare in, and 6 rewards, no less. Definitely a really good weekend for me in terms of end product. We'll get into what I picked up in a minute. But how about yourself, Quinny? Any end product this weekend?
The weekend, I don't think I did that great. I think I got my threshold, and yeah, I had a lot of midfielders that were really cooking last week, but strikers didn't score. It's a real funny dynamic I've got with like the competitive cards in my gallery. You know, the scarcity that I'm playing with, I'm trying to like push the club forward with, and it's just like, yeah, a lot of these guys are clicking off, but it's just it's just getting them all to kick off together. Or it's funny as well, because when you're not playing with as many cards, you're playing with less teams. If you're in a situation where you're only playing like 2 or 3 squads at a certain level, every decision matters. And some of those guys that you're like, oh, would really like to play them, but can't quite get them in a team. When you've got too many of them going around, yeah, sometimes it's just, it's hard picking the team in a good way, but which is fun. So I think it was just some freshies for me, mate, but it was raining trophies at Club Tropicana Drinks FC.
That's right. Yeah, I'm just going to get into my my kind of like results, because I've managed to shift on a couple of the rewards already, but I just want to remind myself of what I'm trying to remember. So rare results. No, is it SO5 stats? There we go. So this week it was 5 rewards in game week 419 for me, and a mixed bag in terms of what I picked up. Across the board, apart from this week, we did actually manage to dodge the goalkeeper bullet. So yeah, 5 rewards, no goalkeepers, 1 super rare and 4 rares. Most of those sort of landed in that tier, a couple of tier 5s. But do you know what? Quite a lot of useful cards. So I did manage to shift one on, but I essentially won a tier 5 Agon Alazi, who plays in the Croatian league as a midfielder, 22-year-old. He's worth a few quid. He puts half decent scores up. Josip Dermic, who plays also in the Croatian league. I managed to shift him. He's 30 years old, forward, Swiss national. Not much use to me, but yeah, quite a useful card for cap modes. So moved him on. And then the next 3 were quite decent. I got Mats Wiefer, the 23-year-old midfielder of Feyenoord, and the Dutch national side as well. So quite a bit of use there. Sort of in 2 minds whether I really need him or whether I shift him on. but might be useful in. I mean, I won Matthew Ryan recently, who is in a similar kind of boat, I guess, to some of the Feyenoord cards. Although I do feel like Feyenoord are doing quite well in the midweeks and in the Champions League so far. So a little bit more inclined to maybe hold on to that card versus like the Matt Ryan, who I think AZ have a quite tough midweek schedule. So even though he has got that midweek utility, he's not quite as useful to me in terms of goalkeeper. He's great for the weekends. But yeah, I've been trying to shift that card because I did feel a little bit like he was overvalued in terms of the fact that he, when I won him, was a tier 0. And this is quite interesting. I'm be interested to hear any of the listeners' views on this as well. But I think at this stage in the season, where we've got a lot of the new cards, everyone's prices are a little bit inflated, especially the goalkeepers, because people want the number 1. So if you get the number 1, not only have you got the jersey mint, you've also got the shirt number in most cases. So I feel like goalkeepers' number 1 cards are particularly inflated, which is probably why a card like Matt Ryan ended up so high up in the star pool that week that I won him. I finished 3rd in All-Star Rare Pro and won Matt Ryan, which doesn't really feel to me anyway like a particularly exciting star reward. It's a great reward, but it's not like a star. You know, when you're talking about how we sort of split up tier 0 and tier 1 recently, kind of split the old star pool. Matt Ryan is the kind of card that you would normally expect to have like ended up in that tier 1 from the recent split. And I think a lot of that is down to he is the number 1. He does wear the number 1 shirt. Therefore, his price was inflated up to like £650 for his rare. And that felt overvalued to me. So I've been trying to sell him since I won him 2 weeks ago, or well, 1 week ago in non-game week terms. But yeah, I haven't really had any bites at the price that he was listed for. So it has seen his price drop by 33% at least, and I'm still not really getting any cash offers for him. So yeah, that's been a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. But anyway, in terms of the other 2 bits that I won in the recent game week, Sieb Hormans of Excelsior puts up some really good scores in the Eredivisie. Not worth, I think he's worth 70 odd pounds. So again, another one I'm not sure. He's kind of similar. He's in a similar kind of boat to a player like maybe like Proper, or I also have who else do I have in that sort of, you know, I've got I forget his name now. He plays in at the back for Herenveen. Anyway, Boshnovic, yeah, that's him. So I've got quite a few options who score well in that position, in that challenger kind of hole. Which brings me nicely onto the other card I won, which is a really decent card to win. And that was Omar Colley, who plays for Besiktas. So I've got his super hero. Yeah, he's super rare. He was a card I was looking to pick up a while back when he was at Sampdoria. So yeah, quite happy to win that. But I have learned that he is out with an injury at the moment, and there's no real indication of how long. It's quite vague. His injury is described as basically like a swollen knee. You know, that could be an ACL for all we know. Like there's no news on like how serious this knee injury is. Whether it's like he might be out for a week, he might be out for 10 months. I don't know yet. So yeah, I'm in a bit of a sticky situation there. It's like, is that grounds for a swap? I don't know. Probably not until we know exactly how long he's out for. But by the time we know that, it might be too late to even apply for a swap. So yeah, good rewards. Happy with them. But yes, it remains to be seen whether or not these are cards that really strengthen my options on a weekend or not. As this weekend's concerned, not so much from like a first viewing, but good rewards. It was definitely a good weekend for end product. Did you pick any cards up, Quinny, this weekend?
I had a wee look back, and yeah, I got some bits and pieces. Nothing like tier 5s and stuff like that, just at the very bottom of the pool. Nothing to write home about in that sense. But no, just the wee bits of freshies for me. But I think for a lot of people, there was lots of eyes on this midweek game week that we're in, just with the amount of games that were actually on, the amount of competitions that were open. And then, what team could you fashion out? What opportunity could you carve for yourself? Was kind of everyone's game. And I think I was personally jinxed into oblivion by the entire community. Everyone that interacted with me was like, "Oh, you're going to win everything this week, aren't you? Oh, you're going to just win everything this week, Quinny. Well done, you." And I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of get that, but I forget what show it was I was on, might have been Laird, but I was saying like, I'm not jumping the gun. You know, I felt a disturbance in the force. I knew something wasn't, you know, like it wasn't quite there yet. And alas, last night obviously it wasn't. But I still think the opportunities are aplenty in this midweek, isn't there?
Absolutely. We were just talking off air, and something that I really wanted to pick the brain of the community on, because Harry Trades put out a really interesting tweet in the week about how, you know, we always know Harry's bit of a random midweek specialist, isn't he? I don't know how much he does plan ahead for game weeks like this, but I think there's a real strategy involved in playing these kind of midweeks. If you really look ahead, in Sorare, you can kind of look ahead at the game weeks and look at the fixtures for said game week to try and spot one of those like little thin midweeks. And Harry is obviously quite a big player of U23, and I found it interesting. I interacted with the tweet because he said that, you know, he's put a team out into U23 Super Rare that I think only had 2 nailed on players in it, and then a couple of like they might play, and then like a goalkeeper that's definitely not even got a fixture. And he was posting up something like there's actually only 15 entries in the whole division that have more than 3 players playing, and there's like 16 rewards or something like that. And it must be difficult for Sorare to kind of, I think U23 is probably on its own in this, where on a normal midweek, they look at how many fixtures you've got, who's playing, and then they kind of balance the prize pools out. But, you know, like in a week like this, like there's quite a few Scottish entries, so like there might be a few more rewards in Challenger. There's only a handful of fixtures in the Americas, so there might be a handful in America. And then I think that we might have had like one random Asian or something. So like the Asia pool will be tiny. It'll be like 2 cards or something like that. But U23, like how can they calculate that? Because there will actually be a lot of cards in the mix, but when you've got such a thin pool of fixtures to play with, the amount of actual nailed on starters that are U23 is very slim. So if you do have a half decent one, in my case, you know, I have Matt O'Reilly, super rare, who did get a decisive even in a bad game week, right? So he scored all right. I've got Kenneth Taylor to play tonight for Ajax, and you know that we'll talk about them a bit later. But there's a couple of decent potential scorers, you know, decisive, capable scorers as well. I've got a Levitt, a unique that I could have used. Obviously, I can't use all 3 of them because they're all midfielders, but there's a few options there that I didn't even really consider U23 super rare. But yeah, when you think about it, U23 is quite unique in that sense, isn't it? That like they can never, on a thin game week, how many less rewards is U23 going to have than say All-Star? Because technically you can run players from any of those fixtures in U23. But if you don't, you know, if you know what you're looking at, you might know there's only one goalkeeper who's likely to start, or there's only one forward who's likely to score. Therefore, if I bang in a couple of decent AA midfielders that I've got that are going to play, you can actually scrape a reward, can't you, in these super rare divisions, particularly because of low supply. You know, it might not be so fortunate in U23 limited, where anyone can go and pick a few cheap limiteds up and actually fling in a 4-player team that are quite decent for X amount of ETH or whatever. But in super rare, it definitely does make sense, doesn't it, to throw in there. And I'm sure Harry, particularly, I'm sure I've seen him before win or like land on the podium with like a 2-player team, something like that.
Yeah, I think definitely when you get higher up the scarcities, this situation is like a nosebleed situation. It's like climbing the mountain. You know, there's just fewer people that are at that, you know, point on Everest, if that makes sense, you know, in terms of altitude. That's just the way I kind of think about the competitions, if you get me. So for super rares and all that kind of thing, squeezing away with 3-man teams and whatever, there can be, especially under 23 actually, because of the lack of goalkeepers, like you mentioned. But I do think like not every league, right? But there is enough leagues out there. Like the Scottish League is kind of what's cheat coded in this week. Ajax have snuck in there because of their shenanigans with fixtures and getting games fulfilled and whatever, I think, and cups and all the rest of it. But we've seen before, like you've mentioned there, like it's not these midweek situations occur kind of time and time again through the season. It might be a Ecuadorian one, or it might be a Argentinian one, or it might even be an MLS one. But there is always midweeks that are moderately exclusive to at least a couple of clubs, if not a division. And when you're at that limited level, I think the huge, like you say, anyone can go into the market and just fill the man up and get it up to a 5-man team and throw it out there if you're playing at that level anyway. But what the difference with some of these plays is going to be is like prioritization, knowing the cards, and then ultimately XP. It's going to be really interesting. We'll probably do this on the show next week if I don't do it properly somewhere else or whatever. But like I was talking to Laird and I was saying to him, I think we talked about it on the preview show for the weekend, but the leaderboards we're going to see this midweek, I think, will be really interesting to look at because they'll be so heavily influenced quite clearly for me by collection bonus because all the teams will be quite stacked. A lot of the cards, SPFL ones, they've all been around for pretty much the same length of time, and people will have. Like Ian's in here. Ian's got some end product this game week. Well done, Ian. Fist bump. He's a St. Johnstone fan. It's not happened very often for him this year. But again, he's got his collection. He's got his team. He's played that. So the SPL is like SPFL, whatever, is a very collection-heavy division. And that's kind of all we're going to see across some of the leaderboards. So I think the impact of collection scores will be really interesting to detail at limited level because in these island game weeks, if you've got the Ecuadorian team, the American team, the Scottish teams, Croatian, whatever it is, but your guys are at 4% kickers on the collection bonus, then anyone that does go and just pick a guy up off the market, even if they are like high XP, they're not going to be, as even if they're in season, etc. So you're going to have like a markable, like almost a scarcity bonus difference in some cases, like across your entire team. So I do think these opportunities are great to see. And for a lot of people that may be tuning into the podcast, you don't get to see these situations happen that often in a season. They do literally happen half a dozen times, and it's trying to work out in the calendar who it's happening for and when. But the Super Rares have got that kind of nosebleed jackpot element of it, where it's like I done it myself. Like I managed to pull it's one of my first cards I won on Sorare. I won a Super Rare in D1 or D2 when it was just like filling a cap in every division. And you could play any scarcity. And it was just like rares were so weak compared to uniques. Like it just was never done. But it was like a midweek and it was MLS only. And I played like Johnny Russell and then like 4 known DNPs. And then Johnny Russell scored a goal. I can't remember how it went. It wasn't that great anyway. And same kind of thing. I won a super rare off the back of that. Pure jammed my way into it. So it can be done in different ways now, obviously. But I think it's kind of scarcity dependent what the opportunity is.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. On the I managed to squeeze together what I thought actually like, because I had quite a few super rares, but they didn't really fit into one category unless I was going to put them in All-Star. And I just felt like it wasn't powerful enough for All-Star. It probably would have done better than I expected, but I had my Levitt unique. I fancied him to get a game this week, stuck him in. So I went into kickoff unique because I had goalkeepers that were starting. I had 2 goalkeeper options in super rare actually. So I put Acevedo in goal. I had Nat Phillips, who I, to be honest, didn't expect to start. He did all right. He managed to put up about a 50 score, I think, in the end. Levitt obviously hit a decisive in his game. And then I had Nicky Clark up top, who managed to bang 2 goals. Cheers, Nicky. And then I also have, still to play, Kenneth Taylor. There is only one reward in this midweek for unique kickoff. But until I think it was the player who is currently sat top, who I now cannot catch. He had a couple of players coming in off the bench, and one of them managed to score. And then his goalkeeper was playing in the same fixture as mine. He had the unique, and they ran out 3-1 winners. So my goalkeeper took a negative decisive. He's picked up a decent score with his bonus added for the unique, which means I now can't catch him. But it looks likely, I'm probably going to finish second. But unfortunately, in this midweek, because there is so few fixtures, second place doesn't actually get you anything in kickoff unique. But, mate, I might have been better off going into a potential cap 240 situation there, which I almost certainly would have scraped together some kind of reward. So it just kind of underlines the fact that we've been speaking about on the podcast quite a lot, and how important it is to like pick your battles, try and pick which of these entries you should be headed for. And I think, back to the point that we started talking on, I probably would have been better off just putting 3 of these players into U23 Super Rare. I might have found myself on the podium with that Levitt assist. That was 100 points on his own with the unique bonus. So, yeah, we live and learn. And I will definitely be keeping an eye out in future on these kind of like thin weeks where I do find myself with a few options. Maybe U23 is the way to go. So, yeah, shout out to Harry Trades, kind of putting that on the radar. Even that mentioned there, like players like Nicky Clark who've just come back in from injury, and that those 2 goals are going to put him almost out of reach for cap mode now, because he's gone from having a nice fat 0 to he's going to be on an L15 of about 82 or something like that now. So yeah, these midweeks do throw the odd spanner in, but it is always nice, as anyone will probably agree, when you do get a player back in from injury who's been out for a little while. So to see him coming back in the last couple of games and hitting a couple of goals, yeah, nice. Hopefully opens up a few more options for me in weeks to come, but definitely looking reasonably good in the Super Rare department. Just got to hope now that Omar Colley injury isn't too serious, because I could definitely use him in some of the coming weeks, especially with the Turkish fixtures and the way that they go, especially over Christmas. But on the subject of fixtures, Quinny, we were speaking off air, weren't we, about the recent announcement of the Palmeiras cards, and you and I have both been talking about how much we enjoy the Brazilian league for those potential future stars. It's a good league to scout. How are you feeling about the onboarding of the Palmeiras cards? Are you going to be picking any up? You got your eye on an Endrick, any chance?
So I definitely. So Endrick for me, number one, just becomes next gen Mbappe for the under 23 reward pool. Like he's just the next guy coming through. It's amazing that he's 16 and he's clearly not a rookie. It feels like he's been playing. It feels like Real Madrid signed him 2 years ago. So it's just funny how it's worked out for him in that sense. But the reason I wanted to bring up on the show today or in the pod is because as soon as this came out, a lot of the whispers that were coming to me from people in the community was, oh yeah, they've got Brazil, they've got the league, it's done anyway, they're doing that, and it's like, really? And if they are, cool. And what do we think about that? Because if they do have more Brazilian clubs to come, Palmeiras are top of the division at the moment. They've got the superstar Endrick. Of course, the unique is on sale already. His under 23 card is slung into the reward pool now for us all to go and fight for, which is good fun. But the Brazilian Premier League, if it's the full division, is a 20-team league, So if it's a full division on board, then that is 20 new goalkeepers in all scarcities. That's a full defence, midfield and attack, substitutes, bench, squad complement, etc. So I think the fact that they've just done Palmeiras makes me think that we're probably just going to get slow spoon-fed, maybe the Giants. Maybe, I don't know. But I just wanted to get your thoughts, Stish, and anyone listening here or after we've been recording.
I think it comes back to that the question of like supply, doesn't it? Supply comes in heavily. Like, do we want more cards? Do we want more choice at the moment? I don't know. But one thing that kind of stuck out to me was I've always looked at the Brazilian league as good value to, like, in terms of like having options from the Brazilian league. I find a lot of their fixtures do fall into the midweeks. So I have quite a few cards from the Brazilian league who up to this point have found themselves with quite a nice scarce supply, because they've moved into the division maybe from America or from the Liga MX, etc. So I've got a few decent low supply options. That the thing with low supply is they kind of hold their value quite nicely as well. So a good example from my gallery is Rafael, goalkeeper, and I got a super rare of his, and I think I picked his super rare up for about 0.6, which for a goalkeeper that starts in a team that keeps quite a few clean sheets, I think is good value, right? And I probably could have shifted him on. Even still now, I could probably get some profit on him because the Brazilian league has fixtures for the foreseeable. Yeah, their season's we're not too deep into their season, so he's got a lot of utility. He's got that midweek utility across most game weeks. So if we do see Sao Paulo cards minted, that is going to affect his price because his supply is going to massively increase. So yeah, anyone who holds any sort of those little unicorn cards from the Brazilian league will probably be hoping that we don't see loads of supply of all these cards just flooding the market. But nonetheless, like you said, reward pool, very excited to potentially win an Endrick. I don't think I will be jumping into any of those early auctions for him. I'm expecting those to go wild. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there'll be some hot competition, as we've spoken about, and as many of the podcasts have spoken about recently. Some of those whales coming back into the market, going to be bidding each other up, no doubt, for that card. So it'll be an interesting auction to watch. He's definitely like the potential next big wonder kid, isn't he? So getting, like you said, it's not going to be a rookie, but for me as well, like I really like the design of that card. I know they've gone back with the kind of like the previous card design, but I'm starting to sound Scottish, mate. Oh, design. You can imagine that one working up north of the border. But yeah, design of that card and the colors and the way that they pop really looks amazing. So it is a nice looking card for the design geeks out there. But on the subject of the design, we've had a few flutters in the chat about something that's happened. Something always seems to break while we're doing this, right, Quinny? And some of the chat in the chat right now is, and I've had a little look online, that Sorare just announced a special edition away kit card for Liverpool. I don't know if you had a chance to look at those, but on the subject of design, or design as I just put it, they look really nice. They've got a kind of like a glitchy effect over the kind of like the red area of the cards as well. So yeah, really liking the look of those, and hopefully this opens the door for a little bit more, special editions. Quinny's just put it up on the screen. I'm not sure if I can share that on the. I might be able to see it. I'm going to see if I can get the screen share up while we're talking about it. But yeah,
they look cool.
They do look cool, right? And the stance of the players is slightly different as well. There's like a. How they're kind of side on, right? Would that be?
Yeah, it's like this. It's like some of the poses we get from the Mexican clubs and stuff like that, which is cool. It's also just a different photo shoot. And see, one thing, like, this is cool, right? But the first thing that comes to my mind is, this is an easy way to get new faces. Because sometimes, like, they've missed picture day, right? But sometimes the home kit is a different picture day. So and then they might do third kits as well. So they've spoke about doing away kits for a wee while. I thought it was going to be an MLS thing because I think they announced it round around the MLS deal. When it went from being the Players Association to being MLS. I'm pretty sure there was some mention of away kits all the way back then. And I think they did sneak an away kit into the Premier League. One of the Premier League teams launched already with an away kit, but they're like extra special pals with Liverpool, aren't they? So these away kits get they're definitely like the first ones that have been held out. Away edition. And there's some really cool away kits out there. They'll be really collectible if they do that for more clubs.
Definitely. I mean, I'm sure like Dinamo Moscow have away kits and home kits on the early mints, right? There was not from the same season, but I think one season they were wearing the white kit, and one season they were wearing the blue kit. If you go back, you can kind of see that. But yeah, they look great. I think. Do you know what it reminds me of? And especially, I think it reminds me of it because it's this away kit as well. But when I was young, like the little Corinthian characters that I know you've got a bunch of them. I don't know if people can see in the background of Quinny's camera right now, but you can kind of see the little football characters along the shelf. And I used to collect them as a kid. And one of the things you used to be able to do with those was the little booklet that came with each of those had like a token inside it. And if you saved I think it was 10 of them or something like that, you could send a stamped addressed envelope off and they would post you back a special edition of, they only had 4. So they had like 2 Liverpool ones and 2 Man United. So you could collect them in the mode of their away kit, but you couldn't buy those in the shops. You could only get them if you sent off for them. And the Liverpool kit that season was the kind of the quarters, the green and white, which is what this season's current kit is based on. So as soon as I saw these new special edition Liverpool away kit cards, it instantly like transported my mind back to the old Corinthian cards. And there
Robbie
was,
Fowler and
I think
Steve
I got
McManaman and
you remember it well then, because it was
yeah.
I've definitely got a Robbie Fowler in the green and white kit, and the Man United ones were in the classic grey, the grey
Is
away.
that the grey like TV
Yeah,
blackouts?
the one that we wore,
Sharp one.
we only wore it 3 times and famously changed kits at half time against Southampton when we were getting battered in it.
I owned that kit.
The grey one, I've got one
I
at
had,
home. It's in a
I
small
had the grey
case.
kit Cantona 7 on it.
Oh,
Mum
no.
bought me it.
Yeah, I've
I
got
didn't know
one.
it was bad luck at the
I've
time.
got all my name on the back of it somewhere at my mum's house. But yeah, classic, a bit of a cult classic kit, that one now, isn't it? Because of
I think I also got the goalkeeper one that year. I really liked it. I did. I
the
got
blue
it
one.
because
The blue and light blue.
no, it might have been the treble year. It was like the green one and the badges in the middle, and
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like the first goalkeeper kit. Schmeichel wore it. It's the first goalkeeper kit I remember
Line
finding
green on
anyway.
arms, polar
And it
net.
had the stuff
Yeah.
in the kit.
Yeah.
You know, like it had the padding in the kit. And I think I just seen it in the shop and talked my mum into buying it. So,
Yeah.
but it was like a green
Yeah.
one, and it was like, yeah, Schmeichel.
Classic.
Cool.
What a time to be alive. That was when Man United were good, which was something else we were going to talk about. I know it's going to turn into a Man United podcast the way we're going on, but yeah, another disappointing performance from them last night, and Ten Hag's banging trouble, I think. Yeah, I think we've run out of ideas a little bit. I don't know if you saw any of the game last night, but Celtic weren't the only poor performance of the game week. I know we weren't covered. Thankfully, I don't think many people will be putting big scores up yesterday in the scene, but yeah, Ten Hag's got to be in hot water right now. I think it's getting to that point now where we've run out of ideas. The philosophy isn't showing itself anywhere. It's hard to figure out what actually the aim is. And yeah, I know the injury list is quite big and extending, but I don't know. I don't know how many more episodes of End Product we're going to be talking about him and Man United in the same sentence, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I put a video out on my channel trying to work out when he would get sacked. And I said, he's got to win this Newcastle game. Newcastle are so injured. They'll be rotating as well. They've probably wrote the game off. It should be an easy W. It gets some feel-good spirit. And then maybe you can do a job against Fulham. And I tried to work out, like, where could he get sacked? Because the fixtures for Man United, see, after the Fulham game, like, you can include the Fulham game as well because they're no mugs.
Yeah.
It's a hard run. The next 6 or 7 games is brutal over the next, like, 30 days or so. But losing that game is just absolute wet fish slapped in the face. You're getting sacked in the morning, Baldy, But I think Man United are back in the situation where they need, in essence, Ralph Rangnick again. They need not him specifically, right? But see when you brought him in, you're bringing him in because you want a neutral person to come in and go, who's the problem? Get them out. What do we need? What are we missing? Get it in. You're kind of at that stage again where that's what Man United fans are wanting. And last time the guy came in and done that, the club didn't want to listen to him and the fans didn't care about him or buy into it and he get hoisted. So can you sack him? Because you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to sink deeper because, like...
Who would want the job is the next question, because me and my friends were discussing this and it's like, I know it's Man United, but right now, this is the hardest job in football right now. Like,
the best man for the job, Stish, is Sam Allardyce. He is the best man for the job.
Turning it into
Big Sam. Big Sam will come in there and get top 6. Big Sam would make it happen.
Big Sam, are we really? Is that where we are now? Yeah, banter club era level. Big Sam. Do you know my friends in the group chat said Big Sam, but it was banter.
Big Sam.
You make me think. You make me feel
Keep
like
Steve McLaren. Bring in Big Sam.
Steve Bruce, mate. It's time. I don't know.
Just say, hey, like, at least he played for Man United. I get a bit of that, but I don't know. Allardyce is your man. He's a wee bit more.
You might keep us up. Keep us in the front.
He'll definitely keep these up. He's got that going for him, if nothing else. But I say that tongue in cheek, right? But see if this was any other team on the continent, that's what they do. They go and get a domestic veteran. They go and get a guy that, hey, get us back top of the league, make us back to being a domestic force, and then when we're in Europe, we'll then worry about getting world-class players and worrying about Europe at that point. And Man United are at that stage now where that's kind of where they need someone who domestically can just school the division, someone who, if he gave all the resources that they would ever want or need at their disposal to, could beat, what is it you need? Like, how many wins in the Premier League? I know Man United aren't going to do it this year, and it's not something that this person would ever be conceivable of, but on the continent, that's the way they think about it. When Bayern Munich hire a guy like Nagelsmann from the Bundesliga or any other manager that they've ever brought in, same with Juve when they pluck in managers from Italy, Real Madrid and Barca when they do it around Spain when they've not had Peps and Zidanes and whatever. That's what's expected of them, is you should be able to bully this division and keep us at the top of it. And Man United are not able to do that, which is why I say Big Sam is like more as a genre more than a man, if you get me.
He's a genre of banter now, isn't he? It's like you put him in the same team as Harry Maguire, it's just like the internet's going to run wild with it. Poor old Harry as well, who, by the way, shout out Harry Maguire. It is actually from a Man United fan perspective, or at least even I hope from like an England fan perspective, it's been nice to see him getting some minutes. And actually, he hasn't been the butt of these performances by any stretch of the imagination. And the maddest thing for me as well is after the Copenhagen result, where, we pulled a rabbit out of the hat in the last minute with the penalty save, obviously Maguire scoring a goal, all the headlines the next day were quite positive. Like, this could be it. This could be the kind of the kickstart they need to regenerate the season and get going. And I believed that as well. After watching that, I was like, right, they'd better be buzzing after that, get into training the next day, crack on and be ready for obviously a very different fixture against Man City, which I think, put the Man City one aside, it was an absolutely shocking performance. But I don't think any Man United fan, being honest to themselves, really thought we were going to take them to the sword. Man City in recent years has been a difficult fixture for any football club. But yeah, I think everything that's happened since that, like the Newcastle game was horrendous. And like you said, Fulham, a game which I'm going to be attending actually on the weekend.
Oh, yes, of course. Happy birthday, Stish.
Yeah. Birthday shout. So yeah, I'll be there for that game and just hope we don't get completely dismantled by Fulham. But if we do lose to Fulham, I'd be very surprised if we're not sat here talking about Ten Hag getting the sack because
there's an international break not too far off as well, so like it feels like there's opportunity there for that kind of thing to happen. But again, as we're talking, like I'm thinking when Man City get the money in, now Man City get the money come in from Dubai, obviously, but before then they had a guy that tried to be a rich owner as well, and he brought in Mark Hughes, and Mark Hughes got in some guys from Europe, but he also signed Milner, Barry, Bellamy, Adebayor, Cliche. He went round. Richard Dunn was probably at the squad already, but that was the kind of the core of that team. They kind of started, and even Fergie. Like, see if you were to look around the league at the moment, and you're to think, right, let's be serious. And if you were to go around the league and think, like Eddie Howe at Newcastle, Mark Hughes at Man City, you're trying to reform a club. A guy that knows the league domestically, what's required, what's the profile, what's the level, and how to go about it. Is David Moyes the number one candidate?
They were talking about this on TalkSport this morning as well, and I think it was Simon Jordan who put his name in the hat. And I think that it would be hard to argue against it on current, like recent success and experience. And I do think because he came in straight after Ferguson, that he, it was going to be difficult for any manager to come to Man United and get a fair crack of it off the back of Alex Ferguson. So he did. My only sort of like lasting memory of Moyes at United was it just felt a bit glum. And I think that, but like I said, that was probably magnified by the football that we were playing under Alex Ferguson to then Moyes. But I don't think a lot of that was necessarily his fault. Who wants to, it's a bit like in my line of work, it's a bit like DJing after the headliner's played. No one wants that job. Do you know what I mean? Coming on after, I don't know, DJing after the Kanye West at the Kanye West concert. Like, what's the point? No one hears. No one. people aren't there for you. And I think that was what Moyes kind of experienced in the football world a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you can't really argue against that. Eddie Howe for the current job, obviously because of the what he's done in the Premier League. But if you're Eddie Howe, under the potential current situation that Newcastle, all the good work that's going on there, the fixtures that they've got ahead of them, and the groundwork they put in the early stages of the Champions League, the potential to kick on from their that get out of the group stage of the Champions League. Eddie Howe isn't going to leave his job at Newcastle anytime soon. So as much as I think he would potentially be like the main candidate for this in any other normal season, but I just think that at the moment you wouldn't leave Newcastle and like the potential trajectory there to manage Man United and the job at hand. So I just think it's a very difficult situation to find ourselves in at the moment, and I really don't know what's next. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of managers around the world whose jobs are kind of like on the line at the moment. I don't really know who comes in, and
I think so many people see these names like Eddie Howe, De Zerbi, some of these other ones around the league. Like, honestly, the more I think about it, who would be more motivated than David Moyes? You know what I mean? Like, really, who would have the biggest fire in their belly to turn that to make it into where it's meant to be and all the rest of it? And I know it's West Ham and it's a smaller scale, but it's kind of the same job. And you look at the way they play football, it's definitely not glum. They've went and signed ambitious players from Europe like Kudus and Paqueta, and then they make a big go of it.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Really, because I do wonder, if you're David Moyes, I wonder if he has any animosity there. I'm not too sure what happened in the sort of latter stages of his managerial career at United and what kind of terms he left on, and whether or not he would go back. I'm not sure, but yeah, in terms of candidacy, he's in the mix, definitely. I just don't know, man. I'm lost. I think who looks at our squad? I don't know what do you think Moyes would do? What would be his first port of call if you're David Moyes and you get the job at Man United? What do you do? You've got a transfer window in December or the end of it. What can you do? What do you do? How do you steady the ship, so to speak?
Well, that's a tall order. That's it. But for me, the real issue is the squad. If you know what I mean, there's too many people that are legacy hangovers. That at this point, like I said with the Newcastle and the City reference, what that club needs at the moment is the clean slate. Is to go right. This is the way we're going. We're just going to get back to winning the league. We're just going to get back to being amazing domestically. Here's the guy to come in, and then he looks at it and goes, it's very hard to imagine many managers would not be really happy to have the likes of Casemiro, Varane. I think Dallo is handy enough. And, having a forward line potentially of the types of players of Anthony, Garnacho, Sancho, Højlund. I'm not going to mention Rashford and Martial, so I don't rate either of them. But those guys, they're all tricky. They're all ambitious. They're all young and up and coming and can play in a lot of different kind of tactical systems. So it's hard to imagine that really anyone that isn't motivated couldn't get a kind of baseline out the team, and then you maybe pull in. Because again, what every manager loves to do nowadays is pull in a champion, a guy that embodies what they want to happen on the pitch, maybe in midfield, maybe defence. These positions are normally where it gets filled with that type of person. With Ten Hag, it's Lisandro Martinez, and we've seen it with other managers as well. So depending on what that manager would want, in defence and or in midfield, you need someone that can come in there and establish identity and dictate tempo.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see a bit of identity. I think we've lacked that for a long time, at least this season. I mean, yeah, it's been difficult watching us the last few years because you just never know what you're going to get on the day. But it's been, yeah, few and far between where the 90 minutes have been up and I've sat there and thought that was great, that was entertaining. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times I've watched United in the last couple of seasons and thought that was good. We showed ourselves a bit there. There might be we might see bits or flashes of it in a game, but you don't see like 90 minutes of it where you're like, we bossed that. We absolutely bossed that. And hopefully we can find someone to come in and look at our squad and go, this is what we need to do. But it just makes you wonder, like, players like Ronaldo and what he had to say, unfortunately, on that Piers Morgan interview, and the way the clubs run at, you know, at the top end and behind the scenes. And even like players, you know, like managers like Mourinho and what he said about some of the players that were there and the clientele. And you think these people are like big personalities and important people who've won everything in, you know, in the club, at club level at least. And you got alarm bells do have to start ringing, don't they, when people like that, of that caliber, are so outspoken about how bad things actually are at that football club.
I agree.
Yeah, that is a lot.
I think one of the things about Mourinho, especially because he's a guy that, although he's won stuff everywhere, he's brought people into success. You know, he's not a fair weather manager that just comes in and, you know, like, I love Ancelotti, but that's maybe one of the things that gets levied at him, is he's been AC Milan, Real Madrid man, you know, like PSG, like Bayern Munich. It's not really that much of a rap sheet he's got, you know, like in terms of striving and, you know, underdogging it in any fashion. Whereas Mourinho he's brought people from Porto, from zero to, you know, Champions League. He's brought Chelsea with money.
Yeah.
But from zero to something, and then everybody else in his career. So I do think that's definitely a big one when you hear people like that saying it, because they know what it takes to make things.
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't think you take the job, but I wonder how many Man United fans out there would take Mourinho back.
Moyes over Mourinho, eh? Surely.
I think I'd rather have Mourinho back than Moyes, and I think we'd have to just listen to him.
Fair enough.
I like Mourinho. I don't know. Yeah. It just disappoints me when players and managers of that ilk have such bitter words about their time at the club. But why would you come back? He's going to come back under the same situation he was in before. So he would never take the job, and, you know, unless the Glazers were not involved anymore. But yeah, I think
this situation as well, but kind of highlights the wider managerial thing that's going on at the moment, because even Tottenham, I know they look like geniuses for pulling out Ange Postecoglou, but they had no idea who they were going to get for their manager. Like, that wasn't like them being cute and like, oh, we've identified Ange as the perfect man for us. You know, they kind of fell into him a bit, you know. And across Europe, like, Pochettino gets the Chelsea job, Tuchel was the Bayern Munich manager. Just like, there is a real like lack of established top-end managers out and around there, you know. And, you know, another thing we want to talk about in the show today was a little bit of, you know, the sleeping giants that are going around, because there's a lot of clubs now that are like really struggling for that identity. And one of the big ones, we've also spoken about Man United enough to death at this point, but another one knocking around the Premier League, which maybe from a Sorare point of view is maybe they're a wee bit more attractive than Man United are at the moment. But in terms of sleeping giants, is Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, be interested to hear from anyone in the chat right now, and obviously in the comments as well if you're listening in future on Spotify or on Quinny's YouTube channel. But Chelsea, if you are a Sorare player and you have a few Chelsea cards, or you have a player who moves to Chelsea, like, how do you feel about using those cards at the moment? Because they are such an up and down side. You can't really pick the good fixtures for them, can you? Like last weekend against Brentford, you'd have had that down as a W, right? And I'm sure that if you went on Sorare data and you were sorting your teams out, that would have been at least a AA fixture, I would imagine, for most players on that team. And I think that they've got into a rhythm. You can kind of predict the starting 11. So from a Sorare perspective, again, that is a good place to be in. And even using them from like a cap 240 perspective, or cap 270, etc. A lot of those players who should be hitting big scores probably have some pretty low L15s at the moment. Players like Enzo Fernandez, probably not as high in their kind of like potential ceiling as they usually can be when they hit a good run of form. So I wonder, like, is Chelsea, from an SO5 perspective, like, are they a good team to hold cards from at the moment, or bad? And I think that doesn't just go necessarily for Chelsea, but a lot of these clubs who are underperforming, you know, play teams like Lyon, teams like Ajax. Like, there's a lot of clubs scattered around Europe at the moment, aren't there, that kind of offer a potential is this the bottom of their scoring, of their price?
Salzburg, Zagreb. We've
Salzburg,
mentioned, yeah.
There's a lot of options out there, isn't there, at the moment that are underperforming. Are you the kind of person, Quinny, who sees this as an opportunity to buy or an opportunity to avoid players like that?
No, I definitely think it is a great opportunity because, again, something similar to what we were chatting about earlier in the show. But like, again, like if maybe the club you support isn't like an elite team, and maybe you're looking for a stack of someone that's a bit more proven and spends money, has world class players, etc. Like maybe it isn't Chelsea, maybe it is Salzburg, maybe it is Ajax or something. I like Chelsea in particular because of how young the majority of the squad is, and if you can, and I know they've got so many injuries and there's so many things going on with them, like you say, they're so hard to kind of roll with, at the moment. But if you like Enzo, if you love Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, I'm just looking at the squad now. Sterling, Jackson, if you're Madueke, if you're big fans of these guys, you believe in them, then like Chelsea, it doesn't take too much for them to go kind of right again and become. I know they didn't finish it last season and they're not really looking that great for it at the moment, but it doesn't take much for Chelsea to really get back into the top 6 conversation, really, And if you've got a team that's top 6 of the Premier League and getting into midweeks in Europe, and I mean conversation, there's a lot of teams that are fighting for top 6 at the moment for the foreseeable, but they're off it, but what I'm saying is, like you said, they're on a down. If they go up a level and they're getting back into that conversation, who are the players that are kicking ass and taking names? I think Enzo's a standout, obviously, because of transfer fee and World Cup win and that kind of thing. But I think it's a great opportunity.
I think I look at players like Reece James. He's come back in from injury. If he can stay fit, he'll be a great SO5 acquisition. Nkunku, a lot of people forget he's even there, but I think we'll see Nkunku after the next international break. And there's been a lot of talk of him, being almost there, but they're not going to rush him back. So I think after the next international round of fixtures, we might see him. And I think maybe he kind of fills a little bit of a void at the moment. I've been really impressed with Jackson. I think he's doing a good job. Cole Palmer's been really good, actually, way better than I expected him. I thought we would see very few minutes for him, but he's really like put himself about that starting 11 and made a good shout for himself. So yeah, I think I wouldn't be put off by picking up a few Chelsea cards. Pochettino's proven in the Prem. Once he gets access to his powers, it'll be interesting I'll be surprised if they don't turn it round. Especially if they can keep Reece James fit. I don't know. And I think from an SO5 perspective, I remember Reece James's scores before we had Reece James cards. He was a player I was following, like waiting for cards to come. So when they are in form, he is a beast of an SO5 scorer. Like Robertson-esque. Like he will be an expensive card when they hit top form, I think. But yeah, I think like talking, Chelsea might be one of those potential. This might be the bottom of the price if they can find form. I think they have, like you said, maybe a little bit more potential to turn it around than maybe Man United do this season. But yeah, only time will tell. And the same goes for like Lyon. Lyon surely can't be in the bottom half at the end of the season. Surely not, right?
I think they've got a great fixture this week. I actually went to see with the Sorare Community Managers World Cup thing that's on. Scotland get out the group stages just about. So me, Hoodwink and McBride are in the next round, but I don't have a striker. So I went and got, for like 10, 12 quid, I went and got Lacazette. Lyon are at home to Metz this weekend, and I thought he's good for an 80 or a 90 against them. But yeah, when I looked at the team, like they've got Coco Tolisso back in midfield. They've got a really strong team. Like Cacare's in great form in the number 10 spot as well. But I don't know if you've seen last week, their game got called off. The manager got like attacked or something.
Yeah. On the way to the game, stones thrown through the bus, cutting his face open. Yeah, it's crazy.
But probably the better thing about Lyon versus Chelsea is the French league. Like if you get into the top 4, you are beating like 10 teams comfortably, that's kind of the situation it gets. Remember when Lille won the league, they were just beating everyone, they weren't necessarily like battering everyone, but they would get wins, they would keep clean sheets. And sometimes they would batter people, of course they would, but and Lyon is just an academy club, so you look at the whole team and they're not all U23. They've got a few veterans like Tolisso and Lacazette, the goalkeeper, but there's a lot of young talent. So it's a real academy club. So some of these sleeping giants now, because Ajax and Bayern are the trope for the stack. Celtic are maybe coming into that a little bit now. Bayern less so. But I remember when Ajax first came on, they weren't a stack. They weren't a power play. They were Ajax. They were like second or third. They were doing okay. And then it was like the year after where they just went balubas. They started scoring like mad and dominating and everything. So you might look at some of these things and it might be really hard to imagine that, they could be as powerful as like some of these other stacks that you see going off. Even a team like Aston Villa, for example.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take much and it can happen. And you're just trying to get one cheap. And some of these teams that we spoke about could be just that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm waiting for Ajax's riches to come good. I've definitely got a few pieces in there. I've got Kenneth Taylor rare and super rare. I've got Van Boomen. I've got Wrench at the back. So I've got options from that Ajax team, and I've been hoping that they would come a lot better than they did. But I do, again, I think they've struggled a little bit with injuries, rotation. I definitely was expecting them to do big things in the midweeks, in the European competition, but I think that it's a bit too far gone for them now. But you wouldn't bet against any of their kind of academy graduates, would you, in terms of like long-term utility? A lot of players that come out of the Ajax academy do, get a move somewhere and come good eventually. But yeah, in the kind of short to mid-term, I can't see Ajax challenging this season. Not personally. No, I think they're too far gone already. I think they're going to struggle. But they have a good fixture this weekend. It's one of those fixtures that could help turn things around for them against Volendam in the midweek tonight, actually, as we record this. So all eyes will be on that fixture. I think if we see a big performance and a big result, it's at home as well, if I'm not mistaken, then this could be the turning point for them to kick on, because they've had the players back from injury now, the ones that they've been waiting for to come back. They obviously lost a few key players in Kudus, particularly recently. So they're starting to fill those gaps a little bit. They have a few players on the fringes that we were waiting to see if anything's going to be like Mika Tadze, who is he the Georgian, I think, international?
Yeah.
I'm really surprised that we haven't seen more of him there this season, because he was impressive whenever I saw him playing in France or Belgium. And I think a lot of people who follow Sorare expected him to maybe come in and become like the hot shot starter centre forward. He's got a bit of a like a young Tadic about him, but we've barely seen him. And you could say that for a few players that they've signed, actually. So be interesting to see what happens there. New manager in, and who knows what happens. But
And JK in the chat reckons Leon could go down this year, which would be the best thing that would happen for their cards.
Imagine them in the second tier.
Leon have been a crazy club over the last few years, so definitely wouldn't completely rule it out. But you'd like to think they're going to be good enough to get out of that at some point. So yeah, a lot of sleeping giants going around now, and like I say, it's one of those ones similar to the Harry Trades thing with the midweek Stish. You were looking at, you're like, oh crumbs, I could have played a team there and might have done something. When these stacks go off, the amount of people that go, oh, I could have bought that. Like that was only X amount so long ago. Even one piece of it doesn't need to be the full bloody thing. But just think that, we both agree there's a good opportunity there for some big clubs that are on a lull at the moment.
There's one in the chat actually that we haven't spoken about, and a special shout out from this podcast, because I got actually tweeted a few times in the week about this one. But yes, Quagak in the chat, St Etienne flying now. Yes, and also, as he mentions in the chat, Etienne Green back in the starting lineup, clean sheet in the weekend's fixture against a good opposition as well. Apparently, he is expected to start for the next couple of months because Larsener is out for a couple of months. So great timing for me, because I've just lost the utility of Chris Brady as my U23 goalkeeper, and I think Baek Jong-bum is in like the latter stages of his time in goal for Seoul before their season ends. So perfect timing for me. Gives me a shot at U23 super rare. And as Quagak mentions, Saint Etienne looking really good. I think one thing I will say about people who play second division is I feel like as a second, when you own cards from that second division pool, you almost want your players to be like smashing it at a club who's like third, fourth place in the league. You don't want them going up. You don't want them looking like they're going to go down either and lose utility altogether. You want them to be smashing in that second division and playing them in All-Star. The minute they go up, they become, like look at what happened to Burnley. Burnley were incredible last season to hold. They're absolutely abysmal this season to hold. So, yeah, if you play second, that might maybe that's our question of the week. Like, if you're playing second division, are you using those cards in All-Star, or are you playing them in the second division tournaments? I think for me, Saint Etienne right now, yeah, those cards, if they're hitting and they're on form, you want them bang in the mix of All-Star and Rare Pro and all those divisions. But yeah, I think Saint Etienne looking good, but if you are a holder of their cards, you don't want them going up right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know. Do you want a really strong season and then a bad one, or do you want a consistently like above average season for another year or two? That's how I like it to go. I'd rather they stayed down personally. But
Keep them where they are.
yeah.
And that just felt like a wee memory off for me. Obviously, last week you were here. We did the podcast in the studio, which was great. And we did a few questions over the last few weeks asking the end product community over the last, so from episode 71 of the podcast, are you playing Super Cap? 2/3 of people said no. 1/3 said yes, like trying, being competitive with it. And then we asked you last week when we were here in the studio, episode 72, has anything changed? Did you see an opportunity maybe after a midweek score came your way or, whatever? And it was 50-50 actually. So there was a wee bit of people started playing 270 after the initial game week or two, which is cool to see. But yeah, it's a good one maybe for this show. Second division cards, what are they good for? And you guys can answer. So we'll actually read out some cool answers if you give us them. Keep it clean. So yeah, second division cards, what are they good for? Because normally I would have said 270 probably over All-Star Stish, but 270 at the moment is Super Cap, and that's a wee bit murky at the moment. So what are second division cards good for?
Yeah, I like that. On the subject of the Super Cap and just like reflecting on that, Quinny, has your stance changed on how you feel about this month-long Super Cap competition? Have you been tempted in, or have you checked out of it totally? Because we're just over halfway through it now, aren't we? So this is the kind of business end now. Done. Not happening for you.
No, I've just not got the goalkeepers or I don't know. I just fancy my chances elsewhere. It's just not been.
I'm having a little look at now. So like, if I look at like my Super Cap on Sorare data, I can see that as it stands, I'm inside a tier 2 reward on limited 270. Because I've been entering it in limited just because normally at the moment I just kind of enter limiteds into the thresholds and even in academy to try and like nick a fiver there. So putting them into Super Cap, I just felt like might be a bit of fun. And I'm currently 480th in the Super Cap limited. In Super Rare, I'm 173rd, but I've only had 2 fixtures at the moment. The way that obviously the top end of the sort of reward pool as it stands are players who have had a good strong week 4 weeks in a row, and we've got 4 left. So the next few weeks for those top end, the top end of the current reward pool will start to change now, because their lowest score will just be removed and the next best one will be added. So the next few weeks will be really interesting to see how the kind of reward places change. But as it stands, I've actually had a couple of okay weeks in 270 Super. So midweeks haven't really. This week I could have gone in. It was, on a thin midweek, it was like, 270 was an option for me this week. But because I had that Levitt unique, I was more inclined to like do I go All-Star Super or, Kickoff unique or, even Cap 240. In the end, I didn't opt for Cap 240, which I probably should have done because I could have probably banked a nice threshold out of it. But yeah, for that reason, I didn't even go near it. But I'm going to have to, if I really want to compete, I think I have to compete in 270 the next 2 weekends. And I had a little look at my lineup builder this weekend. I think I've only got 3 super rare goalkeeper options. And in my head, without even really looking at the strength of those options, I'm going to definitely go for 240 cap super rare for me is a must enter every weekend at the moment. I think you're silly if you don't try and get the ETH. You know, like winning cards is great, but that ETH value stays the same. You know, card values are up and down based on supply, blah, blah, blah. But if you can win that threshold every week at the moment, you're laughing. So I have to enter to cap 240 super rare. That's a no-brainer. Then I'm probably going to go in either U23 or All-Star based on like how potentially strong my U23 is. And I think having Etienne Green back in between the sticks at Saint Etienne really makes, I have to look at U23. Jesus Ferreira at home against Seattle the weekend is not a bad fixture. If I knew Cherky was going to be playing against Mets, I'd probably put him in. I've got options there of teams and players that could and should score well, but it's just picking those teams. But yeah, I think then it just boils down to once I've picked the 240 and then either All-Star or U23, whatever's left, I'm then going to be looking at either All-Star or 270, depending on whether or not I put in a U23. And that is where it starts to get a bit sticky for me, because unless you've got multiple goalkeeper super rare options, 270 always feels a bit more like 4th or 5th choice for me, and not having the options this weekend. And I think if I don't play it this weekend, I'm then relying on midweek utility again, and I very rarely have a good all-around option unless, you know, maybe next week with Champions League, Europa League back in, it might open it up as an option. But yeah, for the minute, I think limited, I'm going to enter it probably every week. And rare, I think I've got enough there now, you know, unless I sell loads of cards randomly, I don't see why I won't be able to enter one into 270 rare. But yeah, as it stands, I think my best chance of a reward is actually in super rare, but I'm less tempted by it because I can't miss out on an opportunity on hitting that threshold. So it's and I think there's probably a lot of super rare players in a similar boat to me that I like. I'd say like in my sort of overall, if you put me in the overall like leaderboard of super rare users, I reckon I'm probably like maybe, you know, like I'm in the European spots, but I'm not Champions League.
Yeah.
The Champions League is all the unique players, right, who have loads of super rares because they win loads of them and they've just got loads of them and that's what they play. But for me, my super rares and my options are probably way better placed in like a really strong all-star pro team or like a regional super rare team, rather than like having loads of pieces that can enter. And you know, I don't look at unique as a potential option for me just yet. So yeah, I think you're probably in a similar boat, right, Quinny, when it comes to super rare. You're probably quite similar to me, that like you can have one really strong crack at a super rare team and maybe like the threshold. So 270 is maybe just feels a little bit out of reach in terms of like, yeah, I don't know.
No, I'm kind of at the point where like I can make 3 really good teams now at super rare level, like to play. And I kind of need a 4th keeper to make. So then I can make like a team that I don't care about as much, but I've still got players that are playing and will probably score okay. But maybe I could throw them away into a kickoff or a 270 or something as team number 4. But basically, I've got the Celtic boys running an all-star. I've then got a healthy amount of people to play 240 at all times. And then between me having 2 champion keepers and then having Edward and Martin and then all the other supers I've got spare, like I've got a Champ Euro team ready to cook. I've not got a stack, I've not got big power cards or anything, but if I can line up enough fixtures, I could have a team that could work, you know. So I've got 3 teams I'm really happy about, and it's just now trying to get a keeper, which is trying to win one. Need a bit of your luck.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued actually to pick your brain quickly on entering a super rare champ, because I have.
Can I say, just before we do, the question we referenced a second ago is after we've recorded the show, we're recording it now, but after we've recorded the show, you'll be watching it on YouTube or listening to it on Spotify. Answer the question on there at that point. Kawak, great contribution bot in the chat. Love to see it. But just when we're throwing that, just wanted to make that clear. Sorry, Stish.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm really intrigued on your entries for Champ, Euro, Super Rare, because I find Champ, the scores are so high in Champ right now. And even having like Mbappe, Kroos, Ter Stegen, like big, massive power cards in that division, I find it absolutely almost impossible to finish in the cards in Rare Pro unless you're playing with like a Bayern stack or like a Man City stack or something like that. So what's it like in Super Rare? Because I've never entered, I don't own a Champ Super Rare goalkeeper, but how do you find the score in there versus maybe putting like that team into All-Star?
It's just as competitive as All-Star, to be honest with you. But you're kind of... So I'm just seeing if I've won anything from it this year. I don't think I have. But I won something in 397. I finished 13th. I was Edward scored that week. I remember it was the first Edward reward. So I've won one reward there this year so far. Finishing 13th, it's not too bad. And I say with my kind of gallery, if I could get one reward, that's probably one a month or something. It's kind of what I'm hoping for. And then maybe once or twice a season it pops and does a bit better. But I don't find it any less... Like the top scores are still like All-Star level. They're still peak. But I say getting into the back end of the prizes, because again, when you're playing a scarcity, like kind of beyond your means, like if you're a limited player and you're playing with rares or commons, playing with limiteds, whatever it is, winning anything that's halfway useful at that scarcity up is what you want. And when you can do it in a region that's really appealing for your gallery or for the market, under 23 champion are the two I'm thinking of especially here, then even like if you pull a tier 3 once every 2 or 3 months, a tier 3, like in the scarcity above what you normally play in, it's under 23 and or champion, could really make a big difference to your season, your club options, So I don't mind it. I don't mind playing that, even though it's not going to be a frequent win percentage, if that makes sense for me. Because I kind of walked myself into it with some of the cards I've been buying this whole time, because I've got so many of them that are champ that I would have to play champ at some point. I've kind of seen this coming, if you get me. So I accept that I'm not going to win in it every week, but I'm happy to try and pick my battles. I think you can do that at this level. It's kind of similar to the midweek dynamic we spoke about earlier. If I see it like this weekend, I'm really excited for it. Bayern are playing Dortmund. Sociedad are playing Barca. There's a lot of big champion games. Leon have got a good fixture. PSG's fixture isn't bad. But a lot of guys are tied into 270. A lot of guys go to All-Star first. A lot of guys go into D3s even before they'll come into some D2, some super rares. So I'm quite excited that like Crystal Palace playing Burnley, maybe Edward scores, and then my goalkeeper maybe keeps a clean sheet for once, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm over exceeding, and then maybe some other people are underperforming. Maybe this week could be one of the ones that pays out for me, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a sensible strategy to have with Champ. And I think that for me, it always boils down to the fixtures. Like if I can put a team of sort of 5 AAA fixtures, and maybe like a couple of players from the same team, like not like a full stack, but maybe like a defensive pairing or a striker pairing. In my case, that might be like Leverkusen. If Leverkusen have got a massively overpowered fixture that is an obvious one that you can pick the starting lineup from, then I might stick Grimaldo, Wirtz, and Frimpong in that team with Mbappe and Donnarumma or something like that. And yeah, if the fixtures line up, that's when it becomes an option for me. But I do find that I avoid it more often than not, and it just becomes a little bit of a like whatever's left goes in champ, and I've never very rarely expect a card in it. But it's very, very difficult.
But I think the acquisition strategy for champion is the thing people miss out on, right? So Ian and you have said similar things in different ways. I think here in the chat, Ian saying he's been playing 18 months, hasn't went anywhere near champ, not got a chance on his budget. And for me, I have not bought any of these guys thinking I'm going to play champ super rare. I'm buying these guys because individually, like I've liked the price, I've liked their situation, and I'm going to play them in All-Star. I'm going to play them under 23. I'm going to play them in D3. And it just so happens that like I've not thought about them being champion and let that put me off, because I know that does happen to a lot of people. I'm more like I'm away to buy a McGinn, a Brais Mendes, a Roca, a Llorente, or whoever it is. I'm just going to get these guys because I like them. I watch them. I know what they're all about. And a lot of champion guys aren't really that expensive, to be quite honest with you these days. There's a bit of a premium on some of the guys that are they have the potential to be an outlier or have extra utility or something like that. But by and large, like run-of-the-mill guys that can break 70 5 times a season aren't that expensive. Run-of-the-mill goalkeepers that play every week at a mid-table team aren't really that expensive. So it's about you wanting the guys. Don't buy a crappy mid-table David Soria if you don't really like him and you don't want to watch him. And these are the guys I'm getting. I'm not getting Ter Stegens. I'm getting Skorupski, and then like accepting that's what I've got and let's have some fun with it because he's the guy for my club.
There's a lot to be said for that as well. Like, especially in Champ, is that like, if you play Champ with cards like that and you do win an Mbappe, it just feels so much sweeter, right? When you win, when you've got a card of like ragtag merry men you've thrown together and then you win, like you finish 5th in the division or something. How good is that? Like, the times that I have won Champ, I won Champ Pro and won. That's how I won Mbappe with the Donnarumma that I'd won the previous week and was actually disappointed with in U23. Do you remember?
Yeah.
So that made the Mbappe win even sweeter for me, and that it particularly sweet because I won that division that week only with one super rare in the team as well. So those little wins really do feel good, and I think there must be people that obviously listen to the podcast who've had those kind of wins with Villa stacks. Like people definitely won Champ with Villa stacks last year. Do you know what I mean?
But people don't buy, or maybe they do a little bit, and maybe a little bit more now, but people don't buy Villa stacks thinking I'm going to win Champ Europe. They buy Villa stacks thinking I'll win 270. Maybe I'll have a chance at All-Star. Maybe I'll be a boss in 240. And then it's just the stars align and you think, I'll go Champ this week.
Yeah.
You've got the guys anyway.
Have a little gamble with it. Yeah, exactly. And it's those ones are nice. And I think that I was thinking about this in the week. I was listening to a friend of mine were talking about, would you ever sell all your so rare cards? And I'm like, I couldn't imagine this not being a part of my week. Even if I needed the money desperately, I'd still need a couple of lineups at least. And I think like, if you were to set this is right, I'm going to ask you the question now, Quinny. If you were to sell your entire so rare gallery and leave yourself 2 lineups, would you rather leave the 2 of your absolute strongest lineups? So in my case, it might be like sell everything except like Veerman, Matt O'Reilly, Mbappe, Donnarumma, and like Di Lorenzo or something like that, and then another team of U23 or something like that, right? Versus getting rid of all your really expensive cards, getting as much money back as you can, but then saving some of the like your little stack, like your Leverkusen stack, or do you know what I mean? Like your team that might smash it one week but might do awful the next week. Like what would your play be if you needed to get out like most of your money out? Would you save yourself like your big stack, or would you save yourself your fun stack?
So the way I've always approached like building my club, especially knowing and leaning into the fact that I was an early adopter, like I was vividly aware of it, and that's why I was so excited about this platform. So I was like, I can't believe I found this before everyone else.
Yeah.
EP, so I wear that as a badge of honor. And I think even if I was to sell everything, I would want to retain any shred of that I possibly could. So I don't know if it would be 2 lineups, right? But number 1, I've got a list on my club page, or like if you go on your club page, you can do a little list. And I've had it for a little while. I've not looked at it. I've not thought about it until you just brought it up. But it's called Lifer. So these are cards that just like will never be transfer listed, right? And I've opened that up, and it's Memphis Depay, Carlos Soler, Arturo Osaka, Ferran Torres, Jordan Larson, and then limited Kostic and Hatate. I don't think I would ever get rid of them. I don't think there's really I sold Depay already for some money and made it back and whatever. So I don't think those guys would ever, even if I did sell everything, I'd probably keep them, maybe try and get a goalkeeper and a defender. I'd have a team. And on top of that, in terms of that whole thing I mentioned about being an early adopter and knowing it, it makes it really hard to give up all of the collections that I've got. So I would need to keep something. It would maybe so, and then it becomes a value prospect here. What situation I'm in? Is it gun to my head, or is it just So I like to think that the one I would definitely keep would be my super rare and unique Celtic cards. I would just keep them, and just play Celtic every week at that level.
Yeah, I don't like the thought of ever having to do it, but I do wonder what I would do, because I would never sell all of them. But I wonder what I would leave myself with. I don't know. Would I leave myself with that kind of Mbappe and But again, that might be another nice sort of discussion point. If anyone listening to this on Quinny's YouTube in the future wants to leave a little comment, be intrigued to know, you know, if you were to set up, would you save yourself a couple of lineups at least, or one, you know, trying to grind the 240s with or something like that and work your way back up that way. But yeah, hard to imagine completely selling up. I can't imagine ever doing that. But yeah, I think that was just something that popped into my head. I thought I'd put it to you. But Quinny, I've just seen the time. This has been a bumper edition of the podcast. I know we had to do it quite short last week, didn't we? So we probably made up the time that we lost, where we only had like 50 minutes, didn't we, to do last week's when we were in the studio. But yeah, we've got through a lot today, and chat's been on fire as well. So if you are in the chat on Twitch, or if you're listening to this in future and you're wondering what we're referring to when we say the chat, we're live on Twitch, usually on a Thursday afternoon, normally between midday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at endproductpod, and we normally fire that out, you know, within sort of 20-30 minutes of going live, just to let people know that we're jumping on and you can join us. If you are live with us and you're wondering what we're talking about when we mention, you know, the future, and we are of course available on Spotify and all of your regular podcasting platforms, and you can get involved in some interactions there. Quinny uploads it, we'll ask a question to the community. So if you're listening to this on Spotify particularly, there is a little poll or a question asked there, so give us some feedback. And of course, Quinny's YouTube channel, nice and easy, drop a little comment, let us know what you think of the podcast, and any interactions with what we've spoken about today. Quinny, have I forgotten anything? I think
that's all sure up. I'd say good luck to everyone this weekend, and go get it.
Definitely that. Good luck, everyone, and we will see you again, same time, same place next week. Good luck, everyone. Go get them.